Hey everyone, you're listening to Fantasy Uptick. I'm Jeremiah Blue, and today we're going to be breaking down the top 10 rookie running backs for the 2020 season. With me today is Shawn Campbell. How's it going today, Shawn?
Oh, it's going great. Another beautiful day in Denver.
All right, so let's jump right into this. Okay, so the first guy on our list is going to be Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Again, this is a list that I made, so Shawn's probably going to disagree with a lot of it, I'm sure. So with the tier one, I'm pretty sure that one is a clean kill for everybody. We're going to do basically a dynasty. Half-point PPR is typically the way I do my rankings because it's somewhere in the middle. So you can adjust accordingly. If you're in a full-point PPR, obviously Clyde Edwards-Helaire is for sure the number one guy. And then in a standard league, you can start talking about Jonathan Taylor, but I still think I would go Clyde Edwards-Helaire based off of the fact that he's on the Chiefs, an offense that if we're projecting moving forward for the next couple of years, I would imagine both of us would think that that's the one I want to bet on to put up the most points over the next decade. And I would assume that Clyde Edwards-Helaire is probably going to be the running back for this offense. So touchdowns you're expecting, and Clyde Edwards-Helaire was probably the best receiver out of the backfield coming out of this draft. So again, it's a perfect system fit for him, and he was a first-round draft pick. So what are your thoughts a little bit on Clyde Edwards-Helaire going to the Kansas City Chiefs?
Well, in a way, it was the perfect landing spot for him, but in a way it wasn't because there's so many weapons there. So it may be that he's the perfect fit for that scheme, but he might not get as much love this year as people are expecting. In Dynasty, definitely, I think you'll see his usage going up and up and up. I wouldn't have the biggest expectations for him this year just because there's so many weapons on that offense.
I agree, and I know everybody's drafting him. He's basically going at the end of the second round in a 12-team mock draft or early third round, and I just think that he's being a little bit overvalued for this year. But Dynasty, obviously, he's going to be an absolute beast. My only concern is Damian Williams is still there, and Damian Williams, I watched a lot of Clyde Edwards-Helaire tape. Damian Williams is a better pass blocker at this phase of his career. And basically when Damian Williams is on the field, Damian Williams is a really good running back. So while I think that Clyde Edwards-Helaire, if you ask me which one I'd rather have, I would definitely rather have Clyde Edwards-Helaire because I think towards the end of the year when you're playing in the playoffs, he's going to be the better player in that scenario. But you got to take into account that Damian Williams is probably going to start off as the main running back. And if he doesn't get hurt or have a fall off at some point, which I know everybody's going to be like, Damian Williams gets hurt every year, which is true to some extent. But if he does not get hurt and he stays healthy throughout the whole year, that ceiling for Clyde Edwards-Helaire is going to be really, really low this season. Now, Damian Williams is going to be a free agent going forward so next year I don't see the Kansas City Chiefs bringing him back unless Damian Williams takes a contract that is of lower value. So then in that scenario, obviously, I think that Clyde Edwards-Helaire would be just an absolute monster if Damian Williams leaves, goes to a different team, and then next year that's basically his backfill.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wouldn't get too caught up on the first-round draft pick. I don't think Andy Reid drafted him as a workhorse. He drafted him because he's a weapon.
And honestly, all running back touches are not created equal. If you're going to be a guy that gets 100 touches via reception, that's going to be way more than 100 touches via handoff. You know what I mean? So Clyde Edwards-Helaire is going to be one of those guys like Christian McCaffrey that can really put up a lot of yards in the receiving game, which is what makes him so good. Even in standard leagues, that's still a huge asset. And he's a guy that makes people miss. Again, 33% missed tackle rate in college, which is one of the more elite missed tackle rates in college. Granted, he didn't get the workload that some of these other guys that we're going to talk about did, but I definitely think that this is far and away a tier one dynasty ad. This has to be, if you're not in a 2-quarterback league, super flex league, he has to be the first player drafted in all rookie drafts. So next tier we go to is Jonathan Taylor. So what are your initial thoughts on Jonathan Taylor?
I like Jonathan Taylor. He's got size. He looks like a 3-down back. But he also, again, he's a rookie. He's got Marlon Mack there competing with him and Mack's experience. So, again, in a redraft league, I wouldn't expect a lot at first. In a dynasty league, I'm looking towards next year when he would be taking over more of a starting role. I don't think really any of the running backs this year are going to be a huge impact on fantasy this year, at least not until the latter half of the season.
You brought up a good point this year versus next year, and you're looking towards next year. When you're looking at Dynasty, which, you know, when we're talking Dynasty, that's essentially you're going to have this guy for basically their entire career. And obviously you can trade them, and these kind of leagues trades happen all the time. But a guy like Jonathan Taylor, or a guy like, most of the time in Dynasty League, I do put more value into year one. I think too many people look too far to the future. Like, you still want to win this year. Right. And then when they have that breakout in year one, or they don't have it, the value changes for sophomores. Like, you can get way better deals on like a N'Keem Harry right now than you could last year at this very time. And in theory, he should be better than he was last year, because now he's had a full year under the system to learn some things to improve, right? But being that he already flopped in year one, his value drops. Now, the big thing with the Colts is that Frank Wright likes to be really weird with his running backs and really historically split the workload. And he's been talking about doing that. It's like he's been saying that he's going to have a 1-2 punch in Mack and Taylor. And then he's going to also have Hines being the third down back. So it's really a 1-2-3 punch, which, I mean, there's only so much that can go around. Now, I have him ranked here for I think Mack's gone next year. But
yeah, I do too.
I mean, there is a chance that they trade Mack in the preseason before the season even starts. Once they start kind of seeing what Jonathan Taylor – I just think Jonathan Taylor is just so much better than Marlon Mack. He's got the patience. He reminds me a lot of like Le'Veon Bell with his size. His abilities – now, granted, he's much faster than Le'Veon Bell, but Bell's better out of the backfield. I'm just talking about his running ability. Obviously, Bell can catch the ball, and Jonathan Taylor does struggle catching the ball. So I think he's going to end up eventually becoming one of those guys that is the 1-2 punch. I don't know that he'll ever be involved in the passing game, but running backs aren't really asked to do much in the passing game. It's just that Hines is there, and Hines is an elite pass catcher out of the backfield. So I do like him. I think he lands in the perfect situation going forward, because I think that offensive line is built like the same question I asked with the Chiefs. If you had to give me one offensive line you think is going to be the best offensive line over the next decade, it's probably going to be the Indianapolis Colts. And Jonathan Taylor is going to be running behind that offensive line. So I think that's just one of those things that I do want shares of him. I think he's significantly better than Marlon Mack. I think towards the playoffs, I think that Jonathan Taylor is going to be taking over. But like you said, Mack's going to have a role, Hines is going to have a role, and Jonathan Taylor is going too high in ADP for my liking for redraft. But I do think he can be an asset this year. And I think he's going to be something great going forward. Like, he's going to be the Derrick Henry type player in this draft.
Right. Yeah, I agree. Again, looking at Dynasty, you got to look ahead. So he projects out very well. I just would temper expectations for year one.
Yeah. So a lot of times when you're looking at these guys, and when I evaluate them, there's analytics that goes into it, and then there's film, right? So film, you kind of look at the offensive line. There is analytics, like PFF does grade the offensive lines in college, right? We're going to talk about that when we get to Akers and how he had the 129th ranked offensive line out of 130, which is awful, right? So there was not a lot of running room. And when you watch the tape, there isn't a lot of running room for Cam Akers. But the other thing is there's like basically two types of running backs: guys that make people miss and can take it to the house. And then there's guys that have that yards after catch and they can really bowl over people, right? And then there's guys that kind of have a combination of everything. And Jonathan Taylor is one of those guys that has a combination of everything. The only aspect of his game that he lacks is really the hands, right? So we're not 100% sure. And now his stats this last year, he was able to catch a lot of balls. I think that was more of a volume and forcing it to him kind of situation. But if he can improve in that aspect, he can be, an annual, top 5 draft pick, like a Nick Chubb type, which I actually think Nick Chubb's got great hands. He just happens to be on the team with Kareem Hunt. But he's going to be an annual guy like that. So this is a guy that you do definitely want to draft. He had a 27% missed tackle rate, but the eye-popping number here was 63% of his yards came after contact. He had 1,272 yards after contact. One of the big negatives that they put on Jonathan Taylor is that he's already had 926 career carries in college. Right. And I was doing some film study, and the only person that's really ever had his kind of success in college and was built like him was Herschel Walker. Now, Herschel Walker came into the NFL, and he basically flopped as an NFL player. And I mean that by what people were expecting out of him based off what his college production was. He had a couple of good years, and he was good while he was healthy. He just never managed to stay healthy. And a lot of people equate that to having so many carries in college. So that's just something to keep an eye on with Jonathan Taylor. If you believe in trying to avoid injured players, it's kind of weird to say Jonathan Taylor's never been hurt, but he's a guy that you want to avoid because he's got so many miles on the tires, you know what I mean? So just something to think about. But for me, I'm not scared off by that because I'd rather have a guy who's never been hurt as my rookie draft pick, as it were, right? And so when we're talking tiers, I got, again, Clyde Edwards-Helaire in his own separate tier. And tier 2, I got Jonathan Taylor on his own tier because I think there's a significant gap between Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Jonathan Taylor, and the rest of the guys, right? I think once you get to standard, I think Jonathan Taylor gets a little bit closer to that tier 1. And I think if you get to PPR, I think Jonathan Taylor gets a little bit closer to that tier 3, right? Because I think Cam Akers and Dobbins can actually catch the ball out of the backfield. Now, this is a little different than most people in Dynasty. Most people have J.K. Dobbins as the next guy on the board at number 3, right? Because he's playing in a better offense, and people project Baltimore to be a run-heavy offense for, again, the next decade, and they expect J.K. Dobbins to kind of take over as the lead dog in that offense. My only concern is I don't see it that way. I think J.K. Dobbins is hella talented, and I want to stress that this is one of the most talented running back draft classes that we've had in a depth perspective in a while. And I think that's why nobody went in the first round, because if some of these guys went different years, I think a lot of these guys are more talented. A lot of dudes that got drafted towards the end of the first round, early second, based on prior years, there was just so much depth this year that people were waiting, right? But what a lot of people talk about is Mark Ingram's going to be the lead running back this year, and then J.K. Dobbins could overtake him this season. That's just ridiculous. That's not going to happen. Mark Ingram is a team leader in Baltimore. He's a good running back. J.K. Dobbins would have to be absolutely ridiculous for him to surpass Mark Ingram and eliminate him from the offense, right? And if you watch the way Mark Ingram plays with Jackson, his ability to really understand the read option is something that I think J.K. Dobbins, even though he did a little bit of that in college, is going to have to really develop into that level like a pro like Mark Ingram. Plus the pass protection aspect, and you don't want Jackson getting hurt. Mark Ingram is an excellent pass blocker. Obviously, Mark Ingram already understands the offense, but let's move past that. I think the smart guys kind of realize that J.K. Dobbins not taking over the starting gig in Baltimore. But people have been talking about Mark Ingram being cut next year because the Ravens are going to owe him $6 million. But they keep saying the term $6 million, but the truth is they're going to owe him $1 million regardless. So it's really, they're only saving $5 million, and then they have to replace him with somebody. And it is the most run-heavy offense in football. So why not just keep a guy like Mark Ingram on your roster? Otherwise, you're going to have to go out and get another guy anyway. And this is my biggest thing with J.K. Dobbins is I don't think he ever takes over as a lead workhorse running back because I don't think Baltimore wants a workhorse running back. I think Baltimore wants a multi-running back offense, right? Whereas if we go to the LA Rams, we've seen that Todd Gurley was the guy. They want a workhorse guy that's in there all the time that they can run hurry up with, that they're not rotating running backs. If you're better than everybody else, they want the best running back in the system. I mean, Gus Edwards was coming in Baltimore with Mark Ingram there because it was a different style. He had a different style than Mark Ingram. He was a through-the-hole bulldozer type running back. So that's just the way they are in Baltimore. Whereas in LA, I think Cam Akers is going to be the best running back there from day one. So I put a lot of stock into year one, and I put a lot of stock into going forward. And the Rams, even though they're not as good as they could be right now, offensive line is bad. So this next year is going to be tough. There's going to be some tough games with Cam Akers and especially the schedule they have is just brutal, especially towards the playoff time. So while I still like Cam Akers over Dobbins this year because I think Cam Akers is going to be the workhorse starter versus Dobbins who's going to be the backup. Now, if Ingram gets hurt, it's going to be ridiculous. Dobbins is going to be a monster because he's on that offense, right? But right. I think Cam Akers can be that workhorse back that you're getting pretty late ADP-wise. And there's 223 rushes, 31 receptions, 254 touches, essentially, that have been just gone from LA because Todd Gurley's out of there. So I don't know. I've been talking a lot. So let me let you weigh in on these two guys and what you think.
No, I agree kind of what you're saying with Cam Akers. I'm not sold on him actually being able to take over that number one spot out there because he's not Todd Gurley. Todd Gurley was a special type player before his knees caught up with him. So I think you'll see a lot more of those passes going more to the tight end and them going into more of a traditional running, because that screen pass they kept playing for Gurley just started getting figured out. So he's going to have to adapt and show us some different stuff. But, yeah, Cam Akers has got a better shot at getting more touches this year. So in that area, I do agree with you. We haven't hit on my number 2 running back yet. So
yeah,
I'll wait. When he pops up, I'll let you know.
Okay, so one thing I want to add on Cam Akers, because I was bringing it up earlier that I'm like, okay, Clyde Edwards-Helaire is a guy that makes people miss, right? And then you got a guy like Jonathan Taylor that can really create yards after contact, right? 63% of the yards created after contact by Jonathan Taylor. And then Clyde Edwards-Helaire his missed tackle rate was 33%. If you go to Cam Akers, 33% missed tackle rate. So the same as Clyde Edwards-Helaire, 79% of his yards came after contact. That offensive line was horrendous. Now, my one fear, and this is difficult to see on tape, and sometimes I will admit that I can sometimes miss this, is that offensive line that bad because he's missing the hole? And he's like, there's no hole available for him. He's going to go to the Rams, who the PFF projects this year's offensive line for the LA Rams. And if I say St. Louis, I apologize, but the LA Rams is ranked 25, right? But they have a lot of young guys. 4 of the projected starters are going to be less than 3 years in the NFL. So guys develop in the NFL. And this is something that I've been like, I have to remind myself, like the guy that I saw last year isn't going to be the same guy this year when we're talking about younger guys. And I think people forget that a lot of times. So I'm wondering if that offensive line can develop and be a little bit better this year. So he's going to have more room to operate than a guy like Todd Gurley did. Because I agree with you. I think Todd Gurley still got a little bit left in the tank. And when he was special, he was special. And I understand what you're saying. But last year, I mean, they didn't really treat him as he was special, and yet he still was able to get just a full workload. And the way the Rams operate is once they get in close, they want to run the ball. I mean, over the last, ever since McVay's been there, they are a run-heavy team in the red zone. And I know you're going to say, well, that's because they had Todd Gurley. But but anyways, it's just a guy that I believe in because he's going to be the workhorse. So let's move on past the tier 3 guys and let us know, because I know that's a big debate, is Cam Akers, Dobbins. Let us know in the comments who you guys believe more in this year. And then we get to Campbell's guy, DeAndre Swift. So talk to me about DeAndre Swift.
I love DeAndre Swift. Maybe it's because I'm an SEC guy. I've watched all these SEC running backs, but he's a really good receiver out of the backfield. He's lined up in the slot quite a lot out of Georgia, at least for a running back. He's got good hands. He's got good speed. He's got good elusiveness, and he does not have a really good running back ahead of him on the depth chart. So I think he's going to win that spot fairly easily with the Lions. So just from a touches point of view, I think he's got the best upside this year, and I don't see that going away anytime soon.
So first of all, I'm a Kerryon Johnson truther. And so I'm gonna say something right now that you're gonna disagree with. Kerryon Johnson's actually gonna have more touches this year than DeAndre Swift. So when I went back and watched DeAndre Swift, there's a couple of things that stood out to me. First off, and I agree with you, this SEC stuff. I totally agree that SEC is a tougher place to play than all the other conferences. When you have success in the SEC, it usually translates over. But with Dobbins, I saw the number 2 offensive line in college football, right? Same ranking out of 130 that I pulled the stat from Cam Akers, and Dobbins was number 2. So we take the difference of or not Dobbins. I'm going to keep saying that, but Swift was number 2. So you take the Georgia offensive line versus the Florida State offensive line. You're talking about 129 versus number 2 offensive line, right? Now he's going to Detroit Lions. He's going to have a wake-up call there, I'll tell you what. So, but second is that, I mean, he wasn't a guy we go back to this missed tackle percentage. He didn't really force a lot of missed tackles. He was only 20%, where we're talking about the other guys who were elite and above him at more of a 33% mark, right? And even Dobbins was at 24%. So all these missed tackle rates were a little bit better. He's not really one of those guys that's going to run people over. 57% of his yards came after contract, which is still good. And I'm not dogging Swift. Swift is a good running back. I'm not saying that he's not. I just really like Kerryon Johnson. when Kerryon Johnson's on the field, he is really, really good. The biggest thing, and again, I can say, hey, the offensive line, a lot of his yards came against weaker opponents, and that, there was so much room to run that basically any of these guys could have done that exact same thing. But what really stood out to me is when you're talking about these top 5 individuals, he was the worst pass blocker of the group. So he's going to follow one of those trends where he might be sitting early in the year, and then he's going to have to take over late in the year, assuming Kerryon Johnson either gets hurt or falters in some way, or he just is out. He's just better than Johnson. And he might be. Swift obviously is a highly graded running back. I'm not saying that it's not possible that he's a better running back than Kerryon Johnson. I just think at this stage in his career, it's going to be one of those things where, being that that's the specific thing he struggles with the most, which is pass protection, he keeps dipping his head, he's going to get Stafford blown up. And that's the number one thing the Detroit Lions can't have happen. Otherwise you get what happened to them last year. So I think it's going to be hard for him to get on the field. I agree that he could possibly be more talented. Even coming into this draft, I wasn't high on Swift. I actually had Akers ranked above him. I had Dobbins ranked above him. I had Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Jonathan Taylor all ranked. So I really had Swift as my number 5 running back. And then he landed in a worse position than all of them. That's why he's in a completely different tier than those guys. So
that's why I'm glad we record these on YouTube so we can go back and play this.
Okay. Yeah, I love it. Yeah,
especially when Swift gets the starting nod week 1.
All right. So tier 5, there's a big drop off for me in tier 5. We're talking Dynasty, right? And Swift was drafted to be the starter eventually. Kerryon Johnson still got 2 years left on his contract, and it's a rookie contract. So it's not the same situation as Dobbins where Mark Ingram might actually be cut next year. There is a chance that happens. Kerryon Johnson's going to be on the roster next season. So unless he holds out, but that doesn't make any sense, or gets traded, that could happen, right? So tier 5, these are guys that talent-wise, my favorite running back of this group is Zack Moss. I have him ranked 7th because outside of A.J. Dillon, he's behind a really talented running back that's going nowhere. So Devin Singletary is not going anywhere. He was a rookie last year. So these are 2 guys that are very similar and very talented. There's a better shot, obviously, that Devin Singletary takes that job and never lets Zack Moss sniff the ball than it is the other way. Devin Singletary has already proved that he's a good NFL running back, right? So Zack Moss is here basically because he's in a situation until Devin Singletary's contract's up where he's going to be splitting the ball at best, right? I do think he projects as the touchdown guy. He led the league in missed tackle rate. He led the league in most missed tackles. He had 74 yards after contact. This guy is great. He only fumbled once every 234 carries. He only dropped the ball once every 14 catchable ball attempts. So, he's got a lot of talent. He's not a burner. He's a guy that's going to be an efficient, basically Frank Gore type running back, and that's the role he's going to be taking. And he's going to end up projecting as the goal line back, in my opinion. So there is definitely value here. And then Frank Gore, obviously 179 touches that are now gone. Singletary's not going to take them all. But out of the 12 goal line carries, Frank Gore had 11. Singletary had 1. Singletary does have fumble issues, does have drop issues. So I don't think in those pressure situations they're going to rely on him very much. But I do think that Singletary's going to be involved. There's just no way Zack Moss is going to take that job completely. So there is a ceiling with this guy. That's why I put Keyshawn Vaughn ahead of him. I'm struggling with this one. Keyshawn Vaughn versus Ronald Jones, because when Ronald Jones first came out, I was high on Ronald Jones. I said he's going to struggle with pass block, but he's going to learn, right? And first year he was it was bad coaching right off the bat. But last year he did show signs of life. He is a good running back when they turn around and hand the ball off to him. He can catch the ball out of the backfield. He doesn't have a problem with catching the ball, which is something that I think gets misconstrued in the media. I think he only had 1 drop all last season and 31 receptions. So his hands aren't a problem. What is a problem is his pass protection. But it's like what we were talking about with these younger guys that I think people forget that there is a chance that they get better. Now, you're gambling if you take Ronald Jones, because if Ronald Jones pass blocks as good as he pass blocks last year and didn't improve, this is Keyshawn Vaughn's backfill, right? Because Keyshawn Vaughn was basically drafted as a guy who that's what he excelled at. He was basically a guy that wasn't bad at anything, wasn't great at anything, and he can pass block, which is something that obviously kept Ronald Jones off the field a lot last year, even though he was clearly the best running back out there. Like, Keyshawn Vaughn's better than Peyton Barber, right? Yet Peyton Barber was on the field a lot last year because he had the ability to pass block and run, which is something that they needed. Now, obviously, we know that Tom Brady's not the most, mobile quarterback. Somebody – what? So you're going to have to be able to pass block if you're going to be in the backfield with Tom Brady. But there's also the idea that Tom Brady can help Ronald Jones go, hey, block that one. That's the one that's going to come free. Yeah. Whereas having that experienced quarterback can teach Ronald Jones, because if Ronald Jones fixes the pass blocking, I think it's going to be hard for Keyshawn Vaughn to see the field. And I didn't believe in Keyshawn Vaughn prior to the draft, so this is not a guy that I believe is overly talented. So, and maybe I'll eat crow on that, but that's why he was one of my biggest winners of the draft, because he was off my radar. He wasn't a guy that I wanted anything to do with. Then he landed in this scenario where we know if Ronald Jones can't pass block, whoever they drafted, whichever running back got drafted to this roster was going to have a real shot at taking over that job. But what I kind of think about when I look at this, I kind of go, well, they waited. They let Keyshawn Vaughn fall. Look at all these running backs that they could have gone up and got, but they didn't because they felt comfortable enough with Ronald Jones. So I'm reading between the lines a little bit there that maybe they're seeing more in Ronald Jones' development than I am. That's my take. Again, that's one of the scarier picks to pick. I probably won't end up with any Keyshawn Vaughn, to be honest with you, because he's going early enough. There's too many people that are true believers that Ronald Jones is terrible. So,
yeah, it's really going to depend on Brady. Who Brady forms a connection with, that's who's going to be out there on the field. And it could be that Brady's the reason why New England had such terrible consistency at running back, and it wasn't Belichick. So we don't know. So I'm kind of treating Tampa Bay much like I do New England. Don't buy any shares unless you can get it for almost free.
Yeah, that's a decent way to look at it. Like I said, the reason I got him ranked above Zach Moss, and I go back and forth with this one, is because of the ceiling that Zach Moss has. And at the end of the day, you want a running back that's going to be a workhorse, right? And right. I just don't see – I think the ceiling's just too low for Zach Moss, whereas the ceiling for Keyshawn Vaughn is he could be the workhorse for one of the best offenses in football this year. And that's this year, Right. And
yeah,
I agree. And if he blows up, he's going to be even better going down the road, assuming they don't feel the need to replace him.
In theory, he's got a more clear path to starting.
Yeah. And then we got A.J. Dillon is the next guy. And this really has more to do for me with – and I put him in the same tier because, again, we're looking dynasty-wise. He was drafted in the second round. Now, he doesn't have a clear path, but if Aaron Jones leaves that team, he does, right?
Right.
And he's not known for having hands out of the backfield, right? But and a lot of people, when they look at Matt LaFleur, because last year he was the offense coordinator for the LA Rams, so they call him a Sean McVay disciple, right? Like a guy that's kind of like comes from that system. They would be wrong. That is not the system he comes from. He spent 1 year with Sean McVay, and yes, the pass catching running back out of the backfield is very important in the Sean McVay offense, right? But
right.
He really spent more time with Kyle Shanahan as like learning from Kyle Shanahan, which we all know what they're doing in San Francisco. They're power running football team in San Francisco, right? Because 2018, 2013 he was with them, and then 2015 to 2016 he also worked for Kyle Shanahan. So he worked for Kyle Shanahan for a long time. I think that's what he mirrors more. So getting a guy like A.J. Dillon, we saw what San Francisco did last year with Tevin Coleman, Mostert, Breida. Like this is a coach that would like to rotate in good running backs. Now everybody's looking at Aaron Jones and be like, well, he was a workhorse last year, but that's because there was a big difference between Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams in talent, Right. So I think this is a guy that they expect to be a heavy member of this offense. And when we look at fantasy, we want guys that are going to score touchdowns. That is exactly what A.J. Dillon projects to be, a LeGarrette Blount type running back. I think the comparison to, Derrick Henry is a lazy comparison because he's not built like Derrick Henry. He's just big, just because he's 240.
Not many people are built like Derrick Henry.
Yeah, yeah, but they're like, oh, he's 247, so he's like Derrick Henry. It's like, no, That's not how that works. Derrick Henry's a monster. There, So yeah, I think AJ Dillon. This is more of they invested in him. They show that they want to put money into him, and I think the Packers are going to transition under LaFleur into more of a run-heavy offense moving forward. And this is the guy they kind of want to build that around, assuming they don't reach a contract with Aaron Jones. And then, of course, so I don't know what are your thoughts on AJ Dillon?
I'm not really very high on him, especially not this year. I think Aaron Jones is a patient enough runner. And when you're talking about a zone blocking running scheme, it's all about running along the line of scrimmage until you see your hole, one cut and go. There's no dancing. There's nothing like that. So you need a really patient running back, and experience builds patience.
Yeah.
So, I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't see that in A.J. Dillon.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I wasn't a fan of A.J. Dillon coming out of the draft, but the fact that the Green Bay Packers are a fan in A.J. Dillon, again, that draft stock means something to me based off of that. I kind of feel – and, again, he's number 8 on a rookie draft. This is not like – at this point, there's not a lot of people you're going to throw over him. It's just that he projects if Aaron Jones leaves, he's going to get the opportunity to be the workhorse if Aaron Jones leaves the Packers because of the draft stock they put into him. But you're going to have to wait. And exactly like you said, I don't want anything to do with him this year because unless Aaron Jones gets hurt, he's not really going to be – and he really doesn't fit what they're doing currently, right? So – and then you go down to Joshua Kelly, and I did a whole video about this, but I'm just not an Austin Eckler fan. I think there was a lot of evidence to show that once Melvin Gordon came back, Austin Eckler was never really the guy they wanted to count on for running the ball up the middle. Like he's a guy who's going to catch the ball out of the backfield, which works better with Phillip Rivers. So that whole style just worked better with Phillip Rivers. Phillip Rivers doesn't have the ability to buy time and make runs for himself. Like if Tyrod Taylor has the option of dumping it to Austin Eckler or getting a for sure 3 yards, we've seen Tyrod Taylor for years. He always does the same thing. He takes his for sure 3 yards because he can run for him. Whereas Phillip Rivers always takes the dump off because he can't, right? He's about as fast as you are, I'd imagine.
He might have me. He might have me. Close. I don't really want to put any money on it. So Phillip, if you want to come, bring it. Come on to Denver. I'll run you at altitude. I got a better shot.
Yeah. And Tyrod Taylor, obviously, he brings that ability as a running quarterback to run the read option where he holds the defensive ends and keeps them honest, right? So now the defensive end can collapse the pocket, which allows running backs to be patient back there because they don't have that pressure coming down on them. They can wait for holes to develop, and a lot of times those holes are going to come up the middle because that's what those runs are designed to do. You know, the running back goes up the middle, the quarterback keeper, he goes to the outside, right? So a guy that projects better in that system is Joshua Kelly. Joshua Kelly projects to be the best running back, the best power back, the best. I mean, and again, he was able to catch, you know, in college. So he's not just a back that he can do it all. And I think he ends up in a good system. The one negative is that's not a very good offensive line. Like, was anybody going to have success in San Diego, which right now the PFF's got him ranked for 30. Going forward.
I think they're LA now. But.
Oh yeah, you're right. LA, sorry. So, but that's my take on Joshua Kelly. What are your thoughts there? Because I don't know. Are you an Eckler guy or?
I like Eckler enough. I'd rather have Eckler, obviously. I think he's going to still catch his passes because he's the most talented back they got as far as trusted and proven. And to say I know what they're going to do with LA, I don't. I don't know what kind of offense they're going to run. I don't think anyone does until probably game 4 or 5. They'll start getting their legs under them and see what they're doing. So usually in those situations, I'll go with the guy that's been proven.
Yeah. Again, now you're saying that, and I agree with you. I would definitely rather have Eckler over Joshua Kelly, but Eckler's going at the 2nd, 3rd round turn. And Joshua Kelly's
not taking him there.
Yeah. And Joshua Kelly is getting going undrafted. So it's like, so.
No, I'm not taking Eckler there, but I would definitely take – if everything's equal, I'll take a share of Eckler.
Yeah. I would definitely rather take Joshua Kelly at the very end of the draft than waste the 2nd, 3rd on Eckler And
now you're talking about draft
yeah.
capital.
But but yeah, I mean, in PPR, that's a different story because obviously Eckler has value there. But again, I just don't think that he's going to reach the numbers that he got last year because he's not playing with Philip Rivers anymore. He's playing with Tyrod Taylor, and I think it's completely different. Now, Herbert does like to do those little screen passes and dump offs, but that has a lot to do with the Oregon offense. We don't really know what Justin Herbert's going to actually be as a quarterback. Who is he going to like to target? Is he going to is he going to target receivers more, tight ends more? There's no history, so it's a guess in that department, which I think they are going to have to lean on the run this year. And I think if they're going to lean on actually rushing attempts, I think Joshua Kelly is the guy that could really step up there and make something happen. Tier 6 was – 10 is a nice round number, so I added in another guy. But there's a couple of guys that could fall into this tier. Since we're doing Dynasty, I went with Antonio Gibson because he fits the super athlete profile that if he ever gets an opportunity could really be just the best running back in the NFL. Now, I'm not projecting that, but like I said, he's got the physical tools to do that if he ends up in the right system. Being that he was a receiver, he has the ability to catch the ball out of the backfield, right? And his coach is the same coach from the Carolina Panthers and the offensive coordinator that was the offensive coordinator there last year, or the quarterback coach there last year. And I assume that they're going to run a lot of that same stuff that they did with Christian McCaffrey, getting him the ball in space, little dump off passes. This is a guy that could really blow up in that department because of the 4.3 speed, being 220 pounds. He had some ability in college. He had some highlight reel plays, but not a guy that I love. Again, he's number 10 on this list, but if I'm taking a shot on anybody, a lot of the other guys, I just don't see the upside. Like McFarland, I just don't think that he can overcome James Conner. He was the other guy that I was thinking of. I just think that a lot of those other guys project to be guys that maybe they'll help you. Maybe they'll have, and I'd even bet if you were just saying, hey, who's going to have a better career? There's a bunch of other dudes that I would bet on over Gibson. But if you're saying which guy can really blow up and win me my fantasy league, and I can take a dart throw at this level, it's Antonio Gibson. Now, yeah. So I don't know. What are your thoughts on Antonio Gibson?
I don't know. He's worth a shot. The big thing with the Washington football franchise is they're so hard to put anything on. I don't know what they're trying to do out there in Washington. They don't even have a name right now, as far as I know.
The problem is the Washington football franchise. Yeah, you're right.
I mean, this is a very poorly ran team. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think Anthony McFarland's going to have a role year one in Pittsburgh, so he was almost the guy I put here. I just don't think that Anthony McFarland ever becomes more than a complimentary guy. He's not 200. Typically, those guys can't get over 200 pounds are just guys that they're always going to be another guy that they're trying to find to put on this team. Now, the Washington football franchise, as it were, is it's like I'm a huge Darius Geis fan. That was the real hard part for me. There's just so many running backs here, and Darius Geis, when he gets on the field, is just so great. I'm still a believer in Geis. I actually think he's a buy low in Dynasty. That's why I don't really like Gibson. But like I said, if I'm picking somebody at this point that's still on the board that could really blow up in the rookie draft, if I actually have this spot and I actually have to pick Gibson, I'm trading him before, because there are people that are really high on him. I know Matthew Berry's talked him up as a guy that could be one of those like guys that can really make a difference and end up being a Dynasty like stash and even have a role this year. But I just don't see it. I just think Geis is too good. Adrian Peterson's still there. And yeah, Peterson will be gone probably next year, whenever he is. But I think Geis, they're gonna build around Geis. I think Geis, as long as he stays healthy, is gonna be the guy.
Well, I think the guy that I would draft above him anyway.
Oh yeah, I definitely do.
Lynn Bowden Jr.
And and again, like it goes back to, if you're asking me who I think is going to have a better career, I would bet on Lynn Bowden Jr. as well, because he's going to be the backup running back to Josh Jacobs in Oakland, and he's probably going to serve as a receiver at certain points and kick return. He's going to be a guy that will come on and off your league depending on how deep it is. But again, I think Lynn Bowden Jr., because he's behind Josh Jacobs, is never going to get the opportunity to really be the workhorse, assuming Josh Jacobs stays healthy.
Yeah, no, but his value isn't, as a workhorse. It's more as a Swiss Army knife. He can do a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember Darren McFadden's halfback passes there with Oakland, but this is Lynn Bowden. He actually played quarterback, so he can make a halfback pass. So
yeah,
I expect to see him in some really interesting roles. I'm a truther. I'm banging. If anyone wants to listen, which no one does, Lynn Bowden Jr. needs to be drafted. Maybe right after a kicker.
Yeah, I already know. We're in a dynasty league together, and we keep 10 every year. And I already know your first. Hey, if you guys are listening to this in that league, you better trade up, because Campbell's first pick is going to be Lynn Bowden Jr. So like, if you want him, you got to go get him. So, but anyways, yeah. Well, anyways, you got anything else to add on these running backs?
No. I would say temper your expectations year one with virtually all these running backs. I don't see anyone falling to a situation where they could lead the league in rushing as a rookie.
I would say
temper your expectations.
Almost every rookie running back is the most valuable during the rookie draft, because people will give you good players. Like who could you get for CEH right now? There's people that will give you Elliott. I'm sure there's people that give you Joe Mixon. And I mean, I am in love with CEH. I think he's going to be great, but I know those guys are great. You know what I mean? Like I'll take those guys every time. You know what I mean? So I think that's one of the things that people need to realize, that this is an opportunity to sell these guys for guys that, veterans that are proven. I think people just in dynasty leagues just generally overvalue rookies all the time. The only rookie that I would say here that maybe has a little bit more value than I think he's being viewed at is probably a guy like Joshua Kelly, because he could end up being a real workhorse there. And I don't think people are valuing Joshua Kelly at all. And then I'm just high on Cam Akers. I just think Cam Akers is going to be absolutely fantastic. So,
you got your guy.
Yeah. So anyways, we'll see how it is. Anyways. So what you guys think about our rankings? Did you disagree? Who are we too low on? Who are we too high on? I know there's going to be a lot of Swift truthers out there. There's going to be a lot of Ronald Jones truthers out there. Hey, I'm not dogging Ronald Jones, right? Not yet. Anyway, I have faith that maybe, just maybe, he can get his head out of his ass. But anyways, so that's it for today's show. Thanks for listening. Remember, if you like the content, subscribe. We're really close to 100 subscribers. I think we're like at 91 right now. So we're like within the single digits away from getting to 100 subscribers would be awesome. But till next time, see ya!